All right, good evening, class. Welcome to week number 14. That is right, week number 14 of your 7315 class, which is your management class. As always, I'm your professor, Dr. J.S.K. Alston. And today we are going to do the go over an article thing that we have done several times in this course. Both of these articles came out earlier in April. One of them came out 5 days ago, and then one of them came out in mid-April, like April the 12th or something like that. But we're going to look those over after we do a couple state of the course updates. So let's get those state of the course updates out first. First of all, all your case studies and all of your discussion boards have been completed. So you don't have any more of those to do. You are totally done with that. One thing that I am going to be doing is eliminating, for future classes, I'm going to be eliminating a few of those and spreading them out a little bit more. But having said that, you all have made it to the end. As you all are probably already aware, I do have some case studies that I still need to grade. So I will be getting on that. The discussions should all be graded at this point. I also have to grade the budget exercise, but yes, all you all have to do for this course now, aside from the continued readings that you have to do, of course, is you have to finish those grant narratives. So go ahead and get that done, and you should be sitting pretty. So that's pretty much it. Course evaluations also opened up today. I got a notice about that. Give me the feedback that I need to make this class better. As you all already know, this is my first time teaching this class, so hopefully you will show me at least a little mercy since this is my first time. But then also for evaluations, the first time teaching a class, you usually get a little bit of leniency from the higher ups anyway, because they know it's your first time teaching it. So having said that, give me some honest feedback so that I can improve this class. And from there, yeah, just keep working on your grant narratives. And that is pretty much all we have to do or all we have to say, because we don't have any outstanding information that we need to share as far as anything else that's coming due. So with that said, let's go ahead and look at a couple of articles. This first one we're going to look at is going to be from earlier this semester, where the reason I wanted to look at this is because if you all do go into management, security is going to be one of those things that you're going to have to deal with. And so this is something that I found interesting, and I'll put the link to this article in the announcement for where I upload this article. So I never pronounced that right. Multnomah County librarians, but this is where Portland, Oregon is. Librarians say they are no longer willing to work as de facto security guards. And again, I will link this, I'll link this story, so I'm not going to go point by point through the article because I'm going to link it. But one thing that this is circling around or centered around is that back in February, there was an incident where a man physically attacked two library workers, and another worker ended up having to pin this man against the library's glass doors in order to restrain him. This is during a time where, and a lot of you are probably already aware of this, we are in a situation, in a national mood, where a lot of librarians are calling for removing police out of libraries and removing uniformed security personnel out of libraries. Okay, so when we look at this, what ended up happening here was that the sheriff's office up here was saying that they had been giving like security services to the library for like 25 years or something. It's in the article. But then apparently what happened was they decided that the policing the county building or policing the county library was no longer within the purview of the sheriff's office, that it should be handled by the Portland City Police. And so with that happening, the sheriff's office did remove their security personnel from the library. the library system ended up scrambling, trying to find replacement security personnel, and they went with a private company, but the private company apparently is not able to provide enough service or the needed service. And so what's happened is it looks like the library up there in Oregon is trying to play with a bunch of different solutions, including trying to they are trying to or have considered, I should say, they have considered reorganizing or rearranging some of the library positions so that security can be removed from some positions and added to some positions and things of that nature. And they have looked at other private security options, but it looks like nothing is feasible. And part of this does deal with, we talked about job creep earlier with the Vocational All article. So we talked about job creep and how library duties evolve. We talked about that several times, and that's mentioned in this article too, that the libraries up there in the Portland area, in that county, they have been they're now also being used not just as information centers, but as warming stations and also places where people can go to get certain social services and things of that nature. So there's been evolution of this library's mission and the services that this library provides, okay? And the issue with that is that when you are diversifying what your library provides, this might mean that you also end up having to diversify your security and other operations because your patron base becomes more diverse. Now, here's what I'm going to say about this. I interned at a public library, and then also I worked at a public library for a year and a half as a librarian. And so I've worked for two public libraries in some form. And what I'm going to say is that those, I feel this isn't always the case. Okay. So don't take this as me putting a one size fits all thing on this. It's not. There are a lot of libraries there are a lot of public libraries that are very much into the remove the police from the library but a lot of the people talking about, we need to remove police and uniformed security from libraries. A lot of these people are people who are either in suburban or low crime areas, or they are people who are working in academic libraries. And I'm not sure that I hear the same amount of get rid of security and police in the public libraries from the public librarians if they are working in higher crime areas, which both of the public libraries that I worked in were libraries that served mostly a low wealth population and a high crime population. Okay. So I try to be very careful about saying that, we should remove cops from libraries. And I'm not a pro law enforcement guy. I'm really not. I'm not anti law enforcement either. I have very complicated views on that, but you won't see me saying abolish the police. That's not one of my hashtags. But having said that, what you're going to be dealing with a lot of these libraries is you're going to be encountering issues where people are you're going to be encountering a lot of issues where these people just have no other place to go. And one thing that we always try to keep in mind with public libraries is that the public library is one of the few institutions that you can go into for any reason. And not for any reason, I'm sorry, but you can go into without having to have a specific stated reason. You don't have to spend money. You don't have to be working there. You don't have to be the owner of the property or anything like that. You can be anybody and go into a public library unless you're banned. And I believe that's a good thing. I believe that every community needs places like that, so that people who need to just come in and use the bathroom can do so without being expected to buy something, or people who need to escape the elements, or people who want to Skype or Zoom a friend can do that very, very, they can do that without having to spend. And so again, the public library is one of the few places that still offers that sort of you don't have to do anything in order to come in here type vibe to adults. Okay. But when you have a situation like that, that also opens the door for there to be situations where people are going to be breaking rules and people are going to not really care about obeying rules or care about or respect the other patrons because they aren't forced to. And some of these people, I know from working in public libraries, some people who come into public libraries, they feel they have nothing to lose and they act like it. Okay. So when we look at this, the reason I'm going to circle back now to this is because, and there have been incidents of people having knives drawn at them at this public library and everything. But the reason I'm going to come back to this is that I'm going to say that what I would like for you all, if you find yourselves in managerial positions to do, is I would like for you all to just consider that I'm not going to say whether you're going to be right or wrong for having police or uniformed security in your library. For me, it's a sensitive subject. It really is, because a lot of librarians are not trained in self-defense. They're not trained to defend people. They're not trained to defend themselves, or break up fights or anything like that. They're not trained to do a lot of the things that security personnel is trained to do. So, I would hesitate and as somebody who takes self-defense classes, by the way, I would hesitate to put those burdens on my regular library staff or on my librarians because they haven't been taught how to deal with those situations effectively. And so, you're pretty much, I think that if you put security issues in the hands of untrained librarians and library workers and make them de facto security personnel, really what you're doing is you're setting them up in a situation to die. That's the way that I look at this. I think that if you teach them just a little bit of like a restraint policy or something, you're teaching them just enough to get themselves killed. And so what I would like for you all to do if you actually go into library management is really, really look at what's needed in your community. Don't give in to pressures from the library Twitter sphere or anywhere like that where they're always saying something radical anyway. You assess what's best for your community and then you make whatever move is going to be best for your community. That's what you need to do as a library manager. Okay. So I'm going to link this article in. If you have thoughts about it, you can share your thoughts in the community of practice or other free-for-all community areas within the discussion board areas here in this class. And now we're going to talk about the second article. Give me one moment here. All right, so the second article that I want to talk about today is from the Women of Color in Libraries website, and it is written anonymously, but it's 5 things I learned as a first-time manager in a predominantly white academic library. Okay, so we did a public library thing first, and now we can balance it out with an academic library thing. These are 5 things. I'm going to, again, link this. I'm going to kind of go through it very quickly, give my little feedback. Keep in mind, though, that I am a man of color, not a woman of color. So my feedback is in no way to correct what's being said here, because even if I were a manager of a library, there just is. It's a reality that people interact with men and women differently. So my perspectives would probably be different from this person who was a woman of color. Okay. So 5 things I learned as a first-time manager in a predominantly white academic library. I'm going to scroll down to, first of all, the point here is that the purpose of this post is not to scare away BIPOC, which is Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Not to scare them away from management, but attempt to make them aware that it takes a lot more than skill and experience to survive and thrive as a manager when you're a racialized minority in a predominantly white profession. So be present in during the interview. And what's meant here when she says be present in the interview is not being physically present, but observe things. Be observant. Observe how the people that are interviewing you interact with one another. Observe how they interact with you, how they interact with rank and file patrons. That's my dog. I'm gonna let him. Oh, okay. He makes that squealing noise a lot when he is itchy, but thankfully he cut it out pretty quickly. So yes, you look at how these people interact. You look at how clean the library is. You look at how and this is when you're interviewing for a managerial job. You look at how clean and tidy the library is. You look at the patrons and how the staff interacts with the patrons. I know you're not going to be able to get a lot of this information while you are interviewing for a job, but get whatever you can. Try to figure out what you can while you're on that interview. And then also ask necessary questions. That's the other part about being present. So ask the necessary questions. If you have questions about things, just make sure you ask if something doesn't seem right, or even if something does seem right, you can ask questions about it, get more information. And that's what's meant by be present during the interview if you are interviewing for a managerial job. The next thing that we've got going on here, number 2, believe people for their actions. A large part of this just goes into a previous manager being very lenient on a employee who's not doing the expected things that an employee should be doing, and this manager of color basically not addressing the situation up front for fear of being called a bad manager, or for fear or for other fears. And just trying to be respectful of what the previous manager had done, but this caused the employee to kind of continue breaking the rules and breaking the expectations and kind of walking over everybody else at the library. So what the advice here is to go ahead and put your foot down. Make sure that you are not just allowing bad behavior and bad performance to go unchecked. And don't rely on what is being said by those who were the managers before you. You can take it to library Twitter, but you can take it to your mentors. You can take it to your colleagues outside of the organization. Tell them what's going on, and get some feedback from them. And if you feel it's appropriate to address the situation, then you just go ahead and address the situation and feel empowered to address the situation. There are going to be those who, if you're not a white person, there just are going to be people who view you as somebody who micromanages, or views you as somebody who's toxic or aggressive or something like that. And don't let those racial bias pieces, don't take those to heart. That's just how people are, and it's the way that people are going to be. Okay. The next thing, and I would say that this can go for all types of people who are not in the majority, not necessarily just people who are people of color and therefore not in the ethnic majority. But question good intentions in a toxic environment. I absolutely love this advice. What you should always be doing is you should, for one thing, just know that a lot of people in this field, they will act like they have good intentions, or they actually will have good intentions, or even if they do have good intentions, I would say that you have to be careful, because good intentions doesn't mean that they thought out what they're doing. Good intentions doesn't mean that they have a blueprint, that they've done it before. Having good intentions just means that they are trying to do something good. But then good intentions can be good intentions for whom, right? If it's good intentions, it's not necessarily good intentions for themselves, but it can be good intentions for their university, for their library, for their students, or for their staff. It could be good intentions for any of those things, and even if it's good intentions for one, it can put the library in direct conflict with good intentions for one of those other bodies. So good intentions for students, as an example. Have the library be open 24/7. Good intentions for the students, okay? But at the same time, when you do that as good intentions for the students, but you're not able to hire more staff, you're instead spreading your staff thinner in order to cover all of those hours. And so that can be bad intentions for your staff. Okay. So I'll never assume that just because people's intentions are good, that it's the right move. Now, having said this, and I can relate to this, even though I don't have direct reports as employees, but I have had students who can kind of be, in a way, direct reports, I guess. I don't know. But what's bolded here really, really is something that struck a chord with me. The most amount of disrespect and condescending attitudes I've experienced and continue to experience are from my white direct reports. White feminism and white male privilege in a predominantly white library allow them to be assertive, confident, and advocates for themselves, but rarely do I experience any respect for doing the job I was hired to do. Okay, so one thing that you will probably want to do if you are I'll just come out and say it. So if you're a white person who is not a manager and you're a direct report for a person of color, know how to come correct. That's the most basic way I can put it, is know how to come correct. Do not, I repeat, do not go and don't talk to them like you are, and you might not be aware of this, but if you are aware of it, don't talk to them as if you are, certainly don't talk to them as if you are in charge, but also don't talk to them as though you understand the situation better than they do. And this is something that, because when we talk about people of color being talked down to and everything, a lot of times that just results from people over explaining, people just acting like we're not going to get the situation. So if a manager is pulled into the situation and the manager is a person of color and you're not, don't, just be aware of how you're coming across, be aware of your tone, and don't say things that make it seem like, oh, they can't understand the situation. And that happens quite frequently. And I'll just say it happens quite frequently. I would say that hopefully your manager is talking to you as an equal, as another professional. That's how I try to talk to my students. But even if you're the person that you are subordinate to is talking to you as someone who is subordinate to them, I would say that as long as it doesn't get to the level of disrespect, then if it doesn't come to the level of disrespect, then just kind of know your place, because a lot of times these people of color, they did have to work harder to get where they are, and then they are not seen as being as respected as those who they aren't treated as if they earned their way to be there. Okay. And so, yeah, people get sensitive with that. So if you are talking to somebody who really had to work to get where they are and they're your superior, and you're talking to them like they're not a superior, yes, it's going to, even if you didn't mean for it to have a racial connotation, it may have a racial connotation. Be aware of that. And so also what I would say is, yes, what she talks about in the second paragraph in this section, pick your battles. You do have to pick your battles, because not everything is worth fighting about, especially, and I pick battles. I have students who get really snarky with me. I don't want to say, it's definitely not always racial, and maybe it's not even racial most of the time, but sometimes I do just have students who do a lot of this Midwestern passive aggressive BS, and it really, when they do it, it's almost like they think that because I'm black, I'm not going to get what they're doing. And a lot of times I be wanting to set people straight, but I don't, because I have to pick my battles. And I know that my administration does not really have my back on this. So I'm very careful about how I do things. And just know, though, that means that if you do catch it from me, you deserved to catch it from me, because I do use a lot of restraint. Do not participate in performative diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives if your presence in the organization is not valued. This is also big. I would say that for me personally, I am valued here at CISL, and I've been fortunate enough that I think I've been valued at every library that I've worked at. So that's just been the luck of the draw for me. But if you are not valued, if you're a person of color who's not valued at your organization, and don't do that performative DEI work, that then they're going to take the credit for and take the accolades for. Don't do that. You deserve better than that. Okay. Don't pimp yourself out. Finally, your success will depend on your assimilation and embracing of white culture. So be willing to leave if you need to be you. And I feel that I have to deal with this a little bit in this role as well. But it's something that people of color definitely have to put up with in this field in order basically to not scare their white subordinates a lot of the time. But what I have to do, I'm black and I'm also a rural Southerner, right? So I have a certain way that I communicate. I have a certain way that I live. I have a certain way that I like to talk and like to do things. And what y'all are saying is not the way that I used to do them. When I was teaching in South Carolina, there are a lot more black people in the South than in the Midwest. And so I was more myself when I was teaching as an adjunct in South Carolina. But here I've had to, quote unquote, whiten it up, do a little Wayne Brady impersonation. And the reason for that is because the first 2 years that I was here, I was just being my authentic self. And there were a lot of racist weasel words that were popping up in my evaluations. I'm aggressive, I'm defensive, I'm abrasive. All of that was I'm too black, and again, don't insult my intelligence. I know what you're trying to say when you say that. So I've had to kind of whiten it up a little bit in order to not scare my students, because they were always talking about how uncomfortable they were communicating with me, which that's another thing. If you have a boss who's a different culture or ethnicity or race than you, don't be all uncomfortable as far as I don't want to talk to them and everything, because that makes you look bad. It makes you look like a wuss. It makes you look like somebody who cannot handle diversity. Makes you look like one of these people who's xenophobic. Just don't be that way. All right. There are going to be people who are different than you, who come from different cultures than you, and therefore operate differently than you. And you are not in the right to say that their being different from you makes you uncomfortable. That's just, trust me, I have to deal with me being here at Mizzou, I have to deal with a lot of people who are not like me. You will probably notice that I am the only black person in Sissel, unless you count Joy Moore, who's actually above Sissel. Okay. So, I'm dealing with people who are not like me culturally or ethnically or racially all the time. And if I acted like that made me uncomfortable, the same way that some of my students talk about having a black professor makes them uncomfortable, I would never be able to get anywhere or get anything done. We're going to read this epilogue really quick. So if you're a white LIS worker, keep reading. This bit is for you. I hope you take the time to reflect and understand that your privilege, to understand your privilege in a predominantly white profession. I hope you will take those privileges seriously, to remind yourself and your white colleagues to treat people with respect for their humanity and not to reduce people to a role, especially if a person of color is in a managerial role. If you're hiring a manager or supervisor, and if you're hiring a BIPOC person basically in a supervisory role, I hope you realize that it takes a lot more than skill and character to be successful as a BIPOC supervisor. So ask yourself, are you supporting this person to thrive in your organization, or is your expectation that they will assimilate into the white culture? What would success look like for this person if the groundwater was not poisoned? And yes, finally, if you're a white library leader, take this opportunity to move from statement and writing into action. So actually do things. We have statements go out all the time in the library field. They're actually kind of boring at this point, okay? But yeah, those were some truth bombs that I wanted to drop on you. I am Dr. Jace, and please, after this class is over, do not vanish without a trace. Hopefully I will see you all in future classes, but I will definitely see you all next week for our final check-in video. Bye-bye.